Fassbender is here. You may not know his face by heart, but you will easily recognize his films. As a matter of fact, just in the last year, he has appeared in 4 movies. He has been called a chameleon, disappearing into characters as different as Carl Jung in David Cronenberg's A Dangerous Method to a vengeful mutant in X-Men First Class. Todd McCarthy, The Hollywood Reporter, says, quote, "It's amazing that it has taken him this long to be fully recognized, as he has it all. Looks, authority, physicality, command of the screen, great vocal articulation, and the ability to suggest a great deal within while maintaining outward composure." His most prominent role this year is that of a sex addict in Steve McQueen's Shame. Here is the trailer for the film. I am pleased to have Michael Fassbender at this table for the first time. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
I don't know where to start. I probably will start with Brandon and who he is, and because this is a film not about sex. It is a film about compulsion. You tell me.
Yeah, I mean, it manifests itself in sexual addiction. But, you know, I think when Abby Morgan and Steve set out to write this, Abby was the co-writer with Steve, the idea was, you know, characters that were looking for some sort of connection and looking for sort of intimacy, but having a real problem dealing with intimacy. And Brandon is definitely somebody who's searching for that. He's trying to connect, but the crux of his problem is this whole intimacy issue, not only in sexual relationships, but also in friendship, the relationship with his sister.
Right.
But it's interesting to look at sexual addiction amongst all of the addictions as well, because it is about that. The fact that, you know, if we look at something like alcohol addiction, drug addiction, gambling,
right.
They're external things that you're bringing in.
Right.
Whereas, you know,
it's a crutch for you because of something else.
Yeah, whereas sex is innate. It's an instinct that's part of us. You know, it's within us. So how do you sort of do you then abstain from it, or do you sort of try and negotiate some sort of healthy pattern, which will allow you to sort of, you know, continue having sex?
There's nothing healthy about the pattern he negotiates.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. It's kind of like
giving up to it, or
I think bottoming out in a certain respect. It's almost like smoking, you know, as that third act really kicks in. It's like, you know, smoking 100 cigarettes, or, you know, to finally sort of kick the habit, or at least realize it. I think, you know, that the thing about Brandon as well is, you know, he's somebody that doesn't like himself very much. And so he sets about, you know, abusing himself, and that's what you know, you clearly sort of see. I mean, there are the sort of, obviously there are the sex scenes in the film, but one of the things that I think is very sort of revelatory about the character is, you know, the scene where he gets himself beaten up,
right,
you know, just to feel something, you know. So he's punishing himself.
I mean, it goes as far and deep and as different as you can possibly go. What would Carl Jung or Sigmund Freud have said to him?
Well, Carl Jung would say, "Go see my friend Ziggy Freud." This case is for him.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that...
A Dangerous Method is the other film that he's...
I think, you know, the first thing that they would probably do is to certainly Jung, I think, to recognize it, allow it, and to realize that it's there. I mean, in Dangerous Method, we see something of that with Keira Knightley's character, Sabina, where she's sort of, you know, she's got this self-loathing. She's very sort of ashamed of herself because she has these sort of fantasies, sexual fantasies. And I think the first thing to do is to know that it exists, and therefore to sort of deal with it that way, rather than try to sort of suppress it, pretend it's not there. And that's, I think, perhaps the first stage. And then, you know, as I said, trying to negotiate a way healthily through it. That would be something that you would have to do through recovery.
She also has a certain power too.
Oh, Kira's character, yes. Sabina?
Yeah, Sabina.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the great thing, without sort of giving the film away. But, you know, the amazing thing about it was, you know, in the Burke Holsey, when she goes into this hospital, she goes in as a patient. and then she becomes a doctor. I mean, that concept alone, I thought, was very modern, very forward-thinking at the time.
And you can see it between, I mean, when she's still a patient almost, begins to look at issues. I mean, she brings a certain, I mean, and he recognizes it too.
This is what attracts him to her
exactly.
as well.
She understands humanity in some way. She understands the human behavior in a certain way that comes from...
And she's got a bravery.
Her life experience,
yeah. She's got a bravery of I think, sort of recognizing it. And, you know, and sort of... She's very sensitive to it, and I think that's what sort of you know, really sort of joins them together. Also, the fact that he's trying out this new sort of talking cure, and so it's new to him. He's at a point in his life, because there's stages, you know, in his life, and at this point he's still got a lot to prove, and he's unsure. So they're going into this sort of unknown territory together. Her as the patient, him as the doctor, and that forms a very sort of strong transference.
And your relationship with Freud.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, let me look, and the other, we'll come to, let's look at these two first. Let's talk about how you approach the two roles, you know. I mean, here you are as an actor, and you're having this phenomenal year. What's the challenge in Brandon for you as an actor?
Well, I realized immediately that I didn't want to dislocate him from me in any way. I wanted to bring him very close to me, because I wanted to deal with... This is the whole thing, you know, it's like sexual addiction. Does it exist? Is it a real mental illness? And the Mental Health Board officially says no. Yet there's an incredible amount of people that claim to be suffering from it. So the first thing I thought was, I don't want to alienate this guy. It's not the guy in the rain mac with the sweaty pants, you know. This is like somebody that you would recognize at work, somebody you would see on the subway, you know, everyday person, us. And so I wanted to bring him as close to me as possible, and then it's about...
No, bringing him as close to you as possible means what? Inhabit the character, or have the character inhabit you, or whatever way you explain it?
Yeah, kind of both,
yeah,
really.
Exactly.
They sort of seem together, but not to sort of, you know, change my physicality too much, you know, not to use anything to sort of hide behind, I guess. To just sort of... kind of, you know, sort of be myself as much as I can within the character. And also by meeting people that sort of are recovering and dealing with this sort of compulsion, listening to their stories. How would I sort of crack this sort of intimacy thing? Because I enjoy intimacy. And how does that sort of, you know, manifest itself? And I was lucky, you know, that this man, one man in particular, really sort of opened up and he was suffering from exactly the same thing.
This was someone who suffered the absence of intimacy.
Yeah, that can't deal with it. Right. You know, it's like if somebody comes to them with an emotional sort of responsibility, you know, that they want to involve you in. It's somewhere that he feels unsafe. It's a place that he can't control, so therefore he stays away from it. And we see that in the scene that Brandon has with Marianne, his co-worker, where actually, you know, there's an intimate relationship forming there, and therefore he can't perform.
What did that person say who was a sex addict to you that helped you understand and bring that understanding into you?
I remember he told me that, you know, because this particular person is recovering, as I say, and negotiating a way of sort of dealing with it.
And did his conversation with you convince you there is something to sex addiction?
Yeah. I mean, without a doubt, for me, it's real. Right. You know, I mean, you know, in terms of just sort of people that are sort of addicted to internet porn and, you know, spend like 72 hours in a room and can't sort of, you know, make love to their partner.
Is that one kind of evidence of sexual addiction? You're addicted to internet porn, for example? And
I think so.
You find that often parallels an identity as a sex addict.
I think, you know, there's tangents, there's tributary factors that go into it. I mean, I think it's all of it is our relationship with sex. All of it is about sort of getting a hit, you know, seeking pleasure. And then after a while a pattern develops where there's not much pleasure getting out of it. The compulsion takes over, the addiction takes over, just like sort of, you know, let's say alcohol, you know, where once you get to the point of being a sort of chronic alcoholic, you need a bottle of liquor to get into your system just to start your day.
Exactly right. You know, it's not pleasure, it's also an essential part of who you are.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, again, that's why the word shame is so important. You know, I think that comes from that point where you're no longer physically or mentally in charge of your own actions. This addiction is now dictating where you're going, what situations you're putting yourself into, and after the fact of climax, you're left with the reality of this lack of control of yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And no matter how much you want to deny that you are addicted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me turn to this collaboration between you and Steve McQueen. I mean, what does he bring? What do you bring? Why are you two so very good together?
I don't know. It's a chemistry thing. You know, it's when you meet somebody, and when we first met, you know, Steve didn't like me very much. I know that in the first meeting.
Why didn't he like you?
He said I was cocky. And
Were
I
you,
guess a bit. I suppose I could have been. You know, it's like you go into so many auditions through so many years, and I made a mess of quite a few of them, and I suppose there can be an element of defensiveness, which you sort of then, you know, cover up by sort of showing some sort of confidence or arrogance or whatever came across. Also, it was very much to do with the material. You know, my mother comes from the north of Ireland, and all my Irish family are really up there, and so, you know, there have been films in the past that have been made that are just, I think, insulting to the people up there. So I wanted to make sure that it was being handled right. Anyway, Gary Davey, the casting director, convinced him to let me come back in for an actual audition. And
after your cocky arrogance.
And I thought I did a good meeting as well. I was like, well, I think that went well.
Yeah. Little did you know.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, who's that guy? Why is he in here?
Who the hell does he think he is?
Yeah. So then when I came back, and I actually had work to do in a meeting, which is always what you want to do. You know, you sort of come and do the meet and greet. But I came back and I had sort of prepared a piece of that middle section with the priest, and sort of, you know, I did the audition for him, and that was it. After that, they offered it to me.
Once you did Bobby Sands in Hunger, I mean, did you say to yourself, you know, this is where I ought to be? You know, this is where I belong.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the fact that, you know, at one point, you know, just to be a jobbing actor is what you're looking for. You know, you're doing odd jobs, and you think, God, I just want to do what, you know, what I love doing and what I've sort of trained to do. And so to be a jobbing actor started to happen to me really sort of when I was 27. I started to sort of make a living out of it. I didn't have to do extra jobs. So that was like, okay, I was like, this is a good position. And then to actually get the opportunity to play a lead role in the film. I know you've been sort of talking about economics here on this show. You do often. And I mean, you know, in 2007 I got the part in Hunger. 2008, we had the experience that we had globally with the recession, and that affected this business as much as any other. So there was just less work for less actors, and surely for actors that are unknown. So for me to get an opportunity to play a part like that, show a potential or a possibility, it was essential timing, really.
And did it open doors in which people said, man, I didn't know you were that good?
It was more like, who's this guy?
Where did he come from?
Yeah, exactly. And
if he can do this good now, where was he yesterday and the day before?
Well,
and why didn't we notice?
Yeah, maybe a little bit like that. And actually what it really did was it opened me up to filmmakers. It's definitely a filmmaker's film. If it wasn't definitely sort of widespread within a sort of audience realm, it was definitely being seen within sort of filmmakers. So that allowed me to get into some new rooms. And then it's that sort of thing of trying to get
In preparing for this, I remember you preparing for the role of Bobby Sands, 600 calories a day?
Yeah, which was going against what the nutritionist told me. I was supposed to do 1,000 calories a day, and I had a breakdown of the food that I was allowed. And, you know, I think each individual's body responds differently. I think, you know, that's why maybe some people like meat, some people like vegetables, and how does one lose the weight? So it was a really trial and error thing. For the first 5 weeks, I stuck by 1,900 calories. Right. And then I just sort of flatlined at 64 kilos. I'm not sure what that is in pounds, but I couldn't really, I wasn't losing anything.
And Joe, what were you feeling physically?
The first 2 weeks, there was, I think by week 2 I was getting sort of insomnia was starting to set in, and I'm really good at anytime,
yes,
anywhere.
Exactly right. On the floor here.
Yeah, I was just about to say I could definitely do that. And you know, that was because your body's just going, what are you doing? Eat something.
Yeah.
And then I got used to it, and then it's just I had an immense amount of focus. I didn't really want to hang around with people that much. I had sort of friends would come and visit, but then I found it was breaking my discipline. You know, you can't, like, you're sitting down watching a film together or whatever, you can't ask the people, please don't eat around me. You know, people have snacks. So I just felt I could keep more focused by myself. And so I went to Venice Beach in Los Angeles, and that's where I sort of did the fast. The weather helped an awful lot. The fact that the skies were blue and it was warm. And then by week 5 I was in my sort of routine, but I had to drop the calories down to 600 for the last 5 weeks then. And then I sort of shed more weight and got down to 58 kilos.
What I'm going to do here is interrupt this conversation now to show you the two roles we've been talking about. One is Brandon and Shame roll clip, and then we'll also see a clip from Hunger in which Michael plays Bobby Sands. There's number one, it's the power of voice, you know, and in a sense the command of language so to tell the story. And the other is Steve just let the camera just stay there. It did not move, did it?
No. Yeah. It was, yeah, just before the scene we had the sort of 2-shot with the priest.
Yeah.
And I remember, this is the thing about Steve, you know, he sort of comes from the art world and just arrives in you know, in the film world without any sort of, you know, schooling about this is how you need to do a shot and cover shot this and cover shot that. So we did the 2-shot, and he'd always said to me, I want to do this in 1. And then, of course, in the day, we did it in the 1, and then we came back the next day and they started no, it was in the morning we did the 2-shot, and then in the afternoon they started setting up for coverage shots. And Steve just said in front of the whole crew, he's like, I'm bored. He's like, I think we should all go home. And Liam at that point looked over and he's like, this guy is different, you know. And then, of course, there was arms up in the air. There was a discussion happening over in the distance with producers. And of course, in the end, you know, Steve got his way.
Right. This is a scene which I want to show also from A Dangerous Method. You're playing Carl Jung. We want to show what about him in this. This is a scene in which he's talking to Sabina about Freud. Without worrying about the particular scene, tell me about what you want us to understand in this portrayal of Carl Jung.
You know, I guess I'm trying to sort of show human beings, you know. I mean, the thing is, when you're dealing with these guys, they're heavyweights in you know, psychoanalysis.
Right.
They're the forefathers of it.
Right.
But
they're the giants.
Yeah, they are the giants, but within that there are massive egos.
Yes.
And there are insecurities.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like they make the same flaws and petty mistakes, if you want to call it that,
and are subject to the same temptations in the end, no matter how much they talk about it.
Absolutely.
And try to dismiss it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also what's interesting there is you've got the pupil and this, you know, the master. Yeah. And it's like, you know, the master takes the pupil so far, but then in order for the pupil to really fully understand himself, does he have to break away from the master? And they sort of use the reference, you know, the father and son theory itself in the film is mentioned when Freud, which actually happened, did faint at the Munich conference. That sort of, you know, rift between them. And also, like in both camps, anybody that disagreed with their theories was quickly sort of ousted out of the camp. Exactly. So, you know, it's interesting, that sort of relationship.